Hello, everyone. It's your girl, Miracle Sims, and you're watching Guys, Sex, and Love. Tonight, we're going to be chatting with Miss Rachael Jenneman, and she is an amazing woman of God that you have to get to know. So, stay tuned.
Hard to figure out that I'm not the type of girl that goes around and fools around. Think I'm so done with that crazy part of my past. So don't get so bold to ask, cause I won't go there. So be aware, yeah. I'm good, but I bet you wish it I would have a one night affair.
Welcome back to Guys, Sex, and Love. I am here with Miss Rachael Jenneman. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm doing great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I'm excited to chit chat with you and everything like that. I appreciate you spending some time with us. And welcome to GSL.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
So, Miss Jenneman, please tell me a little bit about yourself and what do you have going on, as well as let us know where you are.
Well, I'm from Traverse City, Michigan, so I've got to do the Michigan thing and I got to get my hand out. So I'm way up here. We call that near the tip of the mitt. I've lived here for probably close to 30 years now. I've been married for 17 years, have 3 kids. I'm a former children's pastor turned broadcaster. So now I work in radio and I'm an itinerant speaker. So lots going on.
Yes. Look, I love it. We are all the multiple hats, and it's a beautiful thing. Sounds great. We might need to, I don't know if you want to put your teacher hat back on, but virtual teacher for my son. Well, no, we're going to see.
Okay.
You're like, girl, I just told you I'm doing too many things. So yeah, I haven't heard that about Michigan and the mid. So I mean, I'm sure people that are up there are familiar with that concept, right?
Yeah. Anytime you meet somebody from Michigan, you just watch. They bust out the hand, and then they got to tell you where they're from on the map. Yes.
That's awesome. You said 30 years there?
Yeah, pretty much. I lived in Florida for a while, and then we ended up moving to Michigan, and that's when my parents divorced, and my mom, my brother, and I moved to Traverse City, where we're at now, when I was in elementary school. And I didn't grow up a Christian. I did not grow up in the church. And I was working at a restaurant when I was 16. And a guy used to come into the restaurant all the time. And he had asked one of the other waitresses if she would like to come to church with him. And she didn't want to go alone. So she said, well, would you like to come with me? And I'm like, church, I don't know. I mean, I had this belief in God, but I had no plan. I guess I just assumed I was a good person. Why would I go to church? Why would I do any of that stuff? I'm a good person. I'm going to heaven. And she asked if I would go. I said, man, I don't know. That's a lot to do on a Sunday. I'm 16, and then she said something that really changed my life forever. She says, Rachael, cute boys go to church. And I said, oh, I'm in. Okay. So I got my butt up on a Sunday and went. And it was funny because there were 2 girls that I had gone to high school with. So this is the summer between my sophomore and junior year, and 2 girls, they're sisters, that I was going to school with. And I knew they were Christian, but I'm at the church going, oh, I didn't know they were this type of Christian. Like, they had their hands I'd never seen worship before. I mean, church is so incredibly new to me. And but I was drawn to it. There was just something that I wanted, because I wasn't at a place where I needed Christ, or I was at a place that I was at the end of myself, and none of that. I wasn't searching for anything, but I'm watching going, what is going on here? I want to know more. And I went to their youth group that Wednesday. And that's, I think, when I realized for the first time, I have no clue where I'm going. I don't know if I'm going to heaven or hell. I never questioned where I would go. And they didn't even invite me back to church. I just showed up on that Sunday. I had went after work one night. I had bought myself a Bible. I had tried to read it. I showed up that Sunday, and Teen Challenge was there. Some people know what Teen Challenge is, and it's a place where people come for rehab to get set free from drugs and alcohol. And so all these people are giving their testimony, and I'm very fascinated by it. And at the very end, the pastor says, now, who would like to give their heart to Jesus? And I thought it was a hypothetical question. And I said, well, who wouldn't? And I rose my hand. Well, I look around and nobody else is raising their hand. And I quickly put it down, and it was too late because he saw me. And so he called me up front, and some lady is having me say some prayer. I tell people, I said, I get saved by accident because I had no clue what I was doing. And some big gigantic man from Teen Challenge came up to me afterwards and he shook my hand. He said, congratulations on getting saved. And I looked at my friend who I'd come with and I said, what's saved? I don't know what that means. And she goes, okay, well, it means when you've accepted Christ in your heart. And I said, oh, okay. And I didn't have the guts to ask her because I felt so stupid, but I'm like, what does that mean? I have no idea, because I didn't know anything about this whole Jesus Bible church concept, but it changed my life. And that was 23 years ago, I think. And that's where I am where I am. So.
Wow, what an amazing testimony. Well, look, shout out to that gentleman that invited your friend.
Yeah.
As well, that's a beautiful testimony. And obviously it stuck with you throughout life.
Mm-hmm.
You are, not only did this teen ministry bless you, but then it seems like you went off to, do some blessing in regards to children's ministry and whatnot as well. So it's just a very interesting thing, like how God works and like how everything just kind of comes together in a beautiful way. So,
right.
Hey, shout out to maintaining right for so long as well. I'm sure there was probably ups and downs that, you experienced.
Well, and for me, it was, I knew the truth. I couldn't run from it. So I knew that I couldn't fall away. I guess when I became a Christian, there was a fear of the Lord that I'd never experienced before. And I think that's what's missing a lot in our culture. And even in Christians today is that fear of the Lord. And I had that right away. So for me, there was no faltering. There was no going back because I knew the truth now where I didn't before. I didn't have an excuse, I guess.
Mm-hmm. That girl, listen, you done you already done touched on just a few things. Like you just touched on the fact that Leah, like I do feel like that is something that is missing in our society and whatnot today. People are just so bold and brazen with the statements that they say against Christ, against the Bible, against all. And I'm like, if nothing else, like with what the Bible says about people mocking and stuff like that, like I wouldn't want to be one of those people that do that type of stuff. Like I'm like, so it says in there, like, a fool says in their heart that there's no God, right? Like, y'all skip that part, right? Oh, okay. I'm like, right. But what about the part about changing the Bible? Y'all don't take none of that seriously? Okay. I'm like, what about the one where it's like, if you make people stumble and especially children and whatnot, like it's better for you to have a millstone. Y'all don't acknowledge that at all, huh?
Well, no, because it goes against their flesh. That means you have to change what's in here. And most people don't want to change. And I get that. I understand that. But when you become a Christian, you give your heart to Jesus. What you have essentially said is, my life is not my own.
Right.
And there are things that you're just going to have to lay down for the sake of Christ, for the sake of other people coming to Christ. It's not about me.
Listen, that's a word right there. I hope y'all caught that. that is a word. It's like, and at least for me, like when I think about it, and I know I talk about this all the time, but it's like, when I think about it, if I struggle with like my belief and stuff like that, it seems like I would just keep it to myself. Like I wouldn't be out here proclaiming and then trying to drag other people with me. Like I feel like that's part of the issue as well, because it's like you're out here trying to get more people to agree with you. But then I'm like, but the Bible got something to say about that. And it's like, ugh, and then it don't look good for you, that people that do that. And it's just, but again, if we don't believe there's God, or if we don't acknowledge God, then what else do we expect for people with that mindset to think and do? If they don't believe it, so they don't, receive what the Bible is saying about it. And to me, like you say, like, I guess when you come to believe it and stuff like that, you just take it a little bit more seriously. Like, I know you kind of touched on that it was hard for you to kind of go back or not once you knew the truth. And same, I know I wrote about it as well. My single journey, I could never just feel comfortable with sin, right? I could never just feel comfortable like fooling around and stuff that I would try to do. It would just always be in the back of my mind, like, Lord, right from wrong, and you know what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing, and thus, the platform, because it just was like feeling like, Lord, okay, I hear you. I know. Where's my husband then? And when can I do it? Then? You know, and all this stuff.
Yes.
Where I feel like other people wasn't questioning this stuff at all. You know, I'm like,
Yeah.
nobody else in my age range even cares. Why you got me caring? And then I see years later, here I am, you know, talking to people from around the world and having this show. And so obviously it was for a reason, right? But when you're
Yeah.
going through it in the midst of it, you're like, why?
Right.
So yeah, yeah. I also want to congratulate you, ma'am, because you just said you have 16 years of marriage under your belt. Did I get that?
17.
17.
So, yep.
I will get that correct. 17.
It'll be 18 in June.
Yes. Well, congratulations to that. I would love to hear, you know, some feedback or, you know, if you have any gems to drop for us, you know, for in regards to marriage and stuff. I'm only 6 years in myself, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I'm loving it. But yeah, I think that should be celebrated as well, you know, couples staying together and what that takes to get to 17 years and
Right.
all of that. I mean, it seems like, now I'm not going to assume, you can let me know. Like, it seems like you got with the right individual for it to, you know, be where you are now and stuff. But I would love to hear, you know.
You know, I think right before I got married, I was still waiting tables. And someone said this to me, and I'll never forget it. And it is the one piece of advice that I've carried with me throughout my whole marriage, and is what I think has kept me going, I guess, as a wife. And it's super simple, but it's probably one of the hardest things to do. And it was a couple that I was waiting on. And they said, the best thing that you can do in your marriage is just be thankful, because it can always be worse. If you are ungrateful for the person that you have. Now, granted, I have a very healthy marriage. There's no abuse, there's no anything. So obviously I'm not talking to those people that are struggling in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But how easy it is to be incredibly ungrateful for the spouse that you have, because you don't just compare yourself to other people, you compare your spouse to other people, right? Mm-hmm. And how easy it is for me to look at somebody else's husband and go, well, I wish my man was like that. Or the latest rom-com. I'll just be honest. And it's not because I'm a prude. Maybe I am. If I'm a prude, that's fine. Like, I will wear it proudly, but I don't watch romantic comedies or even romance movies, because I will sit there and get angry with my husband. And I've told him that too. I'm like, I'll be angry with you if I watch that, because I will say, why is my husband not like that? Instead of being grateful for the gift that God has given me. And that, I think, for me, that has been the biggest thing that has kept my marriage going, is being thankful to God for what he has given me.
Yes, yes. I mean, I love that. Thank you for sharing that as well. Because we can't, I feel like, you tell me what you think. I feel like Satan would use any little thing to get in between.
Yes.
Especially kingdom marriages.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like you said, kudos to you again for, you know, seeing and acknowledging that, okay, this whole romance movie thing is triggering something within me to look at my marriage in a negative way. This might be something that I don't need to engage in. Same thing. I was reading, like before I got into finally, I guess, using my gifts fully and whatnot and doing things like this. I was kind of procrastinating on the idea. You know, God would tell me, you need to pray more. And I'm like, I know. You need to read the Bible more. I know. But then I'll be out there reading romance novels and stuff like that, and feeling some kind of way about my marriage and about like the frequency. I know this is something I talk about all the time, but obviously it's for reasons or whatever. The frequency of our love life and all these different type of stuff, and doing the comparisons and stuff like that, like you just said. And you know, and something that seems harmless as a romance novel or romance movie can be triggering that in that way for, I believe, kingdom marriages. To and marriage in general, yes, but I think particularly I say kingdom marriages because, like, people, like you say, you are in a healthy marriage that, you know, is happy. It seems to be happy and healthy, and you know, there's fruit, you have children, and all this type of stuff going on. Yeah. And so, if you know, there's nothing it seems that Satan can use other than like finding some type of fault or shortcoming in your spouse. And so he's trying to use that through the romance novels, whatever, you know, to do that. And so, you're right. I feel like we got to be thankful. And I feel like that's one thing for me that has kept me as well is acknowledging and knowing that at the end of the day, a lot of the things that I do and have and things that people see me doing, even this show, is because my husband supports me, right? It's
Mhm.
because he cheers me on and is my muse in a lot of ways and stuff like that. Like, it's funny, but like, even when I talk about daily inspiration, I was just thinking about doing something like that maybe once a week or once a month. Like, but literally his suggestion as well as the Lord showed me that you could do this every day, get on and
Mhm.
share the word basically, or share my Bible study. Because again, I stopped procrastinating, right? I stopped put down some of the romance novels and started getting the Bible
Yeah.
and stuff. And the Lord has used that and blessed it to become what it is today. And I can't imagine like where I would be with any other individual. Like, if I was with my ex or if I was with any other guy, like, I don't know where I would even be. And
Mhm.
so there's a lot that I'm thankful for, even though I hesitate to say this, even though I usually would say that I know that we're not perfect. You know what I mean? I know that we're humans and there's going to be, ups and downs and things like that. But the reason I hesitate to say that is because I talked to a gentleman that has this program called Marriage Reignited, and he's like, we are perfect in Christ, and so I'm trying to, fix my languages and whatnot, or the way I say things now, because it's like, I mean, I don't want to minimize what Christ has done, and in Him we are perfect, But at
Mhm.
the same time, I know as a human, I'm trying to find balance with how to say it. But basically, yeah, understanding that we're human as well, and
Yeah.
understanding that I am not Christ. I'm trying to be like Him every day,
Right.
and everything like that. And neither is my husband. And so, because of that, there's going to be some conflict, but it doesn't have to be something that is like going to break up the marriage or make us feel like, oh, I'm no longer happy in whatever, or so I just feel like, yeah, say we use anything to try to get in between marriages. And so,
Mhm.
again, kudos to you for seeing that and acknowledging that and even sharing that now, because I feel like that's important, especially because, you know, we'll look at things and then we'll like you say, play the comparison game, and it could be nothing even wrong. And
Mhm.
we're making
Right. Yes.
we're making an issue because
Yes. Making an issue out of something that's not even an issue.
yeah. I
And
mean,
we're living in a culture today that we're telling girls, and we should be, have high standards. And I get that we should. But I think we've gone so far and we've set the bar almost too high, where a lot of these poor guys are going, who are genuinely great guys, are going, I can't meet your standards. And
mm,
then when you do that in marriage and this guy is trying so hard, and I get it, there are some guys out there that are not that great, but when you have those great guys that are trying, but you've set the bar so high they can't meet it, that's going to be really damaging to your marriage.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's funny that you said that. 'Cause just yesterday, I saw this social media. I guess it was like this TikTok or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And this lady was like, my friend was telling me about that she met this perfect guy, like he was, doing this, doing that, had a job, all this type of stuff. But then she said that the friend broke up with them, and she's like, basically, y'all want to know why? And and then the girl was like, because this car was old. It's like, I mean, does the car work? And that's what I'm saying. When I mean, if the car
He
works,
does not
right,
deserve you then. Like,
right, like I guess he dodged the bullet with you. But it's just like, I mean, again, like you just said, sometimes we're setting those standards so high, like instead of appreciating that the man actually has a car, right? He
right.
has a car. He could always buy another one. You said he got a
Mhm.
good job. If the car is working, that's all that really matters. Like, what are we talking
Yeah.
about?
How do you know he's not saving up money to buy a nicer car with cash or whatever? There's,
Exactly. But people, it's just one of those things. And so, I mean, I know I struggle as a single woman, but at the same time, too, it's funny because I'm in these like different groups and stuff on Facebook, and there's this one group that's called Let's Be Clear, and they're always like sharing little things. And I notice people say things about marriage and they say things about like relationships and all this type of stuff. But the more I'm in the group, the more I'm thankful for my marriage and my husband. I'm over here like, I am so glad that I'm out of the dating pool. It'll make me just go to him and be like, thank you so much.
oh, yeah, I do that to my husband all the time. I'll say, oh, God, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for being you. And he goes, who did you talk to and how bad is your marriage right now? Like, it's like he knows that I've been talking to somebody or I saw something. Yeah.
Yeah, and so sometimes, yeah, you just got to be grateful for what you have. I mean, because again, I can't imagine it, life without my husband right now. And and maybe because it took me so long to finally get to this place where I'm like, I understand that we got some issues, whatever, or, well, here it is again, y'all. Things may not be going, as frequent as I would like. He's not always at my beck and call. You know what I mean?
Right.
Who will be?
Right.
If a man is always readily available to be like, is he working?
It's because you're paying him. If he's at your beck and call, it's not a husband, it's a gigolo. Like, that's, I mean, can I just be real? Like, there is no man that's at your beck and call.
Right, like, oh, you're not always there when I want you. Like, I mean, neither am I. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
We have to find balance here and
well, and I think God does that on purpose, because then one person's always pursuing the other. Because what does sex do? Sex bonds people together. When the what is it that's released in men? Vasopressin. I can't even think of the hormone. It starts with a V, and then oxytocin with women. Like, that's what bonds us together. And so I think there's a reason why it's always at separate times, because it's God forcing you to bond.
Yes, that actually, I came across something.
Vasopressin. That's the hormone. Sorry. Anyway, go ahead.
No, you good. Yeah. No, I was agreeing that I think that's the same as well. Because again, if we both had, for example, the same drive at all, we would be doing nothing else in life. Like, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
Right.
Like, I was just like going all the time, and then also showing unconditional love for someone, right? Because it's like, sometimes you may not like your spouse, right? You may not like what the person does, but you still choose to love them regardless. I think that's one of the things that I've been learning about marriage, about like, seeing my husband for who he is, learning to love him the way he would like to be loved, you know what I mean? And things like that. Yeah, that's what I've been kind of receiving as I've gone throughout, marriage and stuff like that. And just really acknowledging that, what, I guess this whole idea of perfection is a fairy tale when it comes to marriage. Like, I know maybe, again, these movies and these things hype this thing up so much so that we think or we expect this perfection in humans or whatever. But it's like, it's not always going to be that way. And I have to, continue to, love him, be faithful, all those things, regardless of what he does, because I say that it's like regardless of like what he does in regards to if he's not breaking our vow, you know what I'm saying? Like, just because, again, if he's not at my beck and call right now, that doesn't mean that, I should look at it like, oh, he doesn't love me or whatever, It's just one of those things that I feel like I've learned along the way to kind of just, it helped me shift my perspective about the whole thing.
Yeah.
So then there is no wedge again where there's no issue, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think when it comes to that in marriage, I'm listening to you talk, and it just made me think of the pornography epidemic in marriages and how that can play a huge issue too, where you are expecting something to be a certain way. Because for women, I'm not saying women aren't addicted to pornography. I was addicted to pornography up until I got saved. So I know it is a women issue too. It's not just a male issue, but women are more driven towards the romance novels. And I'm sorry, you'll have to excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. And then the men are driven more towards pornography. And it's not just the women that are doing the comparisons, but the men can do the comparisons too, because of what they've seen and what they're expecting. And that's why it is so important before marriage that you're asking those tough questions. You have to ask that. Is there a pornography addiction? I mean, on both ends, you have to ask that. You don't want to find out a year, 2, 5, 10 down the road that this has been an issue for so long. And that's one of the reasons why there has been a wedge in your marriage. So I think, yeah, as you were talking, I guess that's the number one thing that's coming to my mind, is making sure, you're not comparing yourself because of novels or pornography or whatever else that you're bringing into your marriage.
That's good. That's good. I know we have kind of touched on, that, subject in particular in regards to porn and whatnot on this channel, because, there's even much deeper things going on than what we know, unfortunately. Like, I mean, when it obviously, I don't know if you are familiar, but there, they have the things when it says about like some of the people that we are watching, for example, are being forced to be there, and all these different type of things where you're like, wow, it's really not what we think it is. And so I mean, yeah, it's not good to allow those type of things to again control what we think our marriage and stuff should be. And that's probably why we should get into the word and let God teach us or show us like what it should be versus like our own ideas.
And that's when you were talking about, well, I'm reading this romance novel when I'm not reading my Bible. Well, the Bible, sex is mentioned in almost every single book of the Bible. Sex and money, those are the two topics that are mentioned on almost every book of the Bible, but they're also the top two subjects that are not talked about in church. I mean, if they're in almost every single book of the Bible, shouldn't we be talking about them? Sex and money. And then not just that, but there's a whole book on passionate married sex, Song of Solomon. Why are we not discussing that? And if you want to have a better sex life, why would you go to that romance novel when you can go to the creator, the one who made it, and read the book that he has on it? Because let me tell you something, that's a pretty racy book. Like, it's pretty steamy. The beloved, the Solomon's wife, I mean, she knows what she's doing. There's a lot of ideas that she gives in that book. And if you don't mind me sharing, so I'm in the process, I will have it published in March, I want to say, is a devotional about married sex. And in that devotional, I break down a lot of what the Song of Solomon talks about, and what not necessarily what Solomon himself talks about, but what the beloved talks about, and what we as women can be learning from her. Because I think when it comes to marriage and sex, we talk about it a lot before marriage. We talk a lot about it during premarital counseling, and it just seems as though we don't talk about it again until 10, 20 years down the road, when you find out someone's addicted to pornography or you're having marriage issues, and then the topic comes up, well, how often are you having sex every week? Well, it's pretty much non-existent. It's like, those are the only two times that we're talking about it in marriage. We should be talking about it more often. We should be talking about it 5, 10 years down the road. And why not have a devotional about it? We have a devotional about almost everything else. Why not have a devotional that says, you know what, I want to improve the sex life I already have with my husband. I want to find a different way that I can love him, maybe more than what I have been.
Listen, man, well, look, again, thank you. Thank you, because I'm right there with you. I agree that we as the church need to be having this conversation more often. I mean, at the end of the day, like you already just said, the narrative is that when you get married, that it dwindles and all this type of stuff. And it's like, but see, I feel like this is another thing that is just always, if you really, really look at it, there's like, I feel like every aspect of life is challenged by like the world or mainstream media or however you guys want to look at it, right? Whatever the Bible says, you'll hear the opposite in the mainstream media. So the Bible says marriage is where we should have all the sex, right? And where we should be, all these things, exploring these things. But when do we push it in the mainstream media? Oh, premarital, anything outside of, marriage. And then, and then we got all these couples that are like, oh, well, there's sexless marriages and all that, which to me doesn't even make sense, because it's like, this is the time, like, that's the time that God has appointed for us to be engaging in these activities and exploring, and whatever the case is, like you just said, talking about, the beloveds and their connection and whatnot. Like, this is the time. The romance and all of that should be happening here. But because I don't know, I guess we just allow these different things to influence us.
Well, it's not just the world. I'm sorry, I think I just interrupted you. It's not just the world that gives us ideas, but life happens, right? So when people say, well, marriage becomes sexless, well, what happens in marriage? You start pursuing your careers more than maybe you did before. You start having children. You're having the stress now of creating a home and buying a home. And it's all of these things that pile up, and they're all good things. Buying a home is a good thing. Having children and having a family is a good thing. But when all of these pile up, what's the first thing to go? It's the sex life, because you're tired, because it takes time. And when you've been married for a certain amount of time, or even if you've just been together more than a year, the in-love feelings, the passion that you had, well, it's gone. And now it becomes more work. And that's not a bad thing. I believe those in-love feelings that you have at the beginning of the relationship and even at the beginning of the marriage, that's kind of like glue. I believe that that's from the Lord. But as those deplete, it now has to take work on our part. And unfortunately, we live in a society, I don't want to say that's lazy, that's not where I'm going, but I think the word I'm looking for is grit. We don't have a whole lot of grit anymore. There's a whole lot of, I'm the victim, I'm going to play the victim, and I'm entitled to X, Y, and Z. Well, when you play that entitlement, you lose out on learning how to get grit. And I think that's why a lot of marriages, even in the church, are splitting up and they're depleting because they're lacking that grit. And I am not going to tell somebody when they should get married, because it's all about when God sends that person to you or wants you. You know, you want to follow God's path, but even in the church, we have this idea of when we should get married. You should be young, or you should have a career first, and then you should get married. No, it's about when God plans for you to get married. That's when you should do it. However, I feel as though I had a benefit of getting married young, because we did go through a lot of hard times, not necessarily with each other. We just went through a lot of garbage in the beginning of our marriage, whether it was financial, whether it was abuse from people in the church, or just other things that kind of piled on. And what did that do? It created that grit, and it made us stronger, where we could have easily just said, okay, we're done. We said, no, we're going to persevere. And just as I said earlier, I feel that there is this lack of a fear of the Lord in our society as Christians. There's also that lack of grit and that lack of perseverance.
Amen, sis. You're right about that. You definitely are right about that. I would love to, hear what your inspiration was. I mean, I know you kind of already touched on, reasons why you're creating this devotional and things like that. But I mean, was there something in particular that's like, hey, you know what? I need to do this. Like,
that's a really great question. So I came to Christ probably near the end of the purity movement, is what is known as the purity movement now. I read the Joshua Harris books. I know there are a lot of people out there that said that the Joshua Harris books ruined their lives, and they're not married today because of them. I never gathered that. And I think because I became a Christian near the end of the purity movement, and a lot of people hated that movement, they blame the movement for a lot of the issues that they're in. It didn't rub off on me the way it rubbed off on other people. So because I came to Christ later, a lot of they're women now, but a lot of the girls that I went to youth group with, I went to church with, now that they're married, they really struggle in their marriage when it comes to sex. And it's because they grew up in the purity movement of don't have sex, be pure, be pure, be pure. And it was almost as if virginity was idolized. It seemed as though the world worshipped sex while the church worshipped virginity. And instead of looking at sex as a gift, they took on virginity as that gift, and that was their identity. And once that was gone, suddenly they're not pure anymore. And it was this as if their identity was gone, which to me was totally foreign, because when I got married, I looked at my virginity and I said, peace out. Like, I want nothing to do with you anymore. So that, but I didn't grow up in this purity movement of stay pure, stay pure, stay pure.
Mm-hmm.
And they did. And now they're trying to figure out, even 10, 15 years into their marriage, they're still trying to figure out what their identity is of not being a virgin. And I just, again, that's so foreign to me. Mm-hmm. And I thought, if this is something that God has placed in the Bible, put a whole book in the Bible about, isn't it something that we should be doing? I mean, it's even a command from Paul in the book of Ephesians. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I'm going to go off a second here. In the book of Ephesians, Paul specifically says, men, you need to meet your wife's sexual desire. He didn't just say this about women meeting your wife's or meeting your husband's sexual desire, because there's a lot of that in the church too. Well, you need to make sure that you do this for your husband so he can stay with you and blah, 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 blah. Hold on a second. Paul says specifically, men, meet your wife's sexual desire. That was an incredibly scandalous verse in the New Testament, because in the Roman Greco area, women were just baby makers. That's all they were. The family unit was not as sacred as what Paul was trying to make it, where men, yes, they were married, but those women were not valued. They went to the brothels a lot. There was a lot of homosexual pedophilia going on, and it was perfectly legal for them not to do what they wanted with it was perfectly legal to do all of that. And Paul's saying, no, monogamy, stay with the one that you're with, your wife, and meet her sexual needs. That's a big deal. Huge, scandalous for that time. Mm-hmm. And to watch a lot of these women who grew up in the church saying, I'm struggling because I feel like sex is dirty, because that's what it's almost, in a sense, has been portrayed my whole life. It's a duty that I do for my husband instead of something fun that is supposed to be bonding with my husband. And that's kind of when I said, okay, why don't we do a devotional about it? There's all sorts of stuff for women. There's Bible studies, there's prayer groups, there's groups on homemaking. That's awesome. Those are all great. Those are all things that we need. How about a group where we just sit and we have candid conversations about sex 5, 10, 20 years after marriage versus before marriage, or when the marriage is in trouble? And it's just 6 weeks. So once a week, you read through it. There's a Bible plan at the end where you go through the Song of Solomon, but also other scriptures that talk about sex. And then I have ideas on things that you can do as a wife to bring romance, because it shouldn't just be the husband's job to bring romance to the marriage. The wife should also have a responsibility. I mean, if we want to be equal partners, you know what I'm saying? Like, we talk all the time, especially in the church, about women want to be equal. If you want to be equal, you need to also be bringing a good amount of romance as well. Mm-hmm. And so there's ideas. And then I also put dares and double dares. I dare you to flash your husband this week, or I dare you to just be naked in bed and wait for him to show up. You know, like, there's just different fun ideas that you can do to kind of just spice things up. And that's where it just really stemmed from. And I did it as a small group at church, and we just opened it up to the women. We had a private women's group on Facebook, so it wasn't like it was blasted throughout the whole church and all the husbands were, bringing their wives to sign them up. It was just this private group on Facebook for all the women in the church. Hey, we're doing this group, limited amount of women. And so we came, and for 6 weeks we did this group, and it was just a lot of fun to have tactful conversations. We didn't put our husbands down. We weren't emasculating them in any way. We just came and said, hey, these are some of the struggles that I have. I don't know who to talk to about it. I don't have a desire right now because the kids are so little, or because we're busy, or whatever. And we just had candid conversations. And not only that, but I did it as an experiment. I had a group online with a bunch of pastors' wives from across the country, and they were kind of my guinea pigs, my test group, where I said, okay, here's the devotional I'm writing. I want to start this small group. And so they went through it with me. And there was a lot of that same thing of, I grew up that sex was dirty. And so even 10 years after marriage, I'm still struggling with the idea that this is okay.
Man, sister, I'm in awe. I'm thankful. I'm just so many things right now because I didn't necessarily grow up in the purity culture, which you were referring to as well. But I've talked to some people that, definitely share some disdain for that. And I think, again, like you've already reiterated so well that, it's like I get why the generations before us wanted to teach us about being pure and all those things, right? But at the same time,
it was so well intentioned.
Yeah, and I understand that, because again, we see what it's like on the flip side where anything goes, right? So you want to try to put some value, right, on what God has created, and I totally get and understand that. But at the same time, I feel like you just said, there's a way to do that with balance, so it's not seen as dirty, it's not seen as bad, it's not seen as a sin or whatever the case is. That call out what actually is the sin. It's the time that people are doing it. That's the problem,
right?
But it's not the act itself,
right?
So I love that you have created this. I love that you've done this small group and things like that. I mean, obviously, I'm sure that you even probably have gone deeper now that you have, actually had women involved and they're actually going through it. And I think that's amazing. I think we need more of that across the board everywhere because, because sex is not this dirty, bad thing. It's something that is, like you said, is a gift for us. And so, I think, again, that was one of the things back in the day for me. I'm like, okay, Lord, I understand. I hear you. You want me to wait, Yeah. And how can I, what can I do in the meantime? And that's the crazy thing. Like, one of our top few videos on the channel right now was the question that I had back in the day. Well, what do I do when I'm horny and single and Christian?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
And we had a
conversation that's difficult.
about that here. Yeah, and things like that. And so, because again, I would pray those prayers. I'd be like, well, Lord, take it away then. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need it right now, whatever.
Yeah.
And and then would feel like it wasn't being taken away. And it's like, well, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
And it's just this whole thing. And so,
there's got to be more than just cold showers to help, right?
I was like, is there anything like, and then would, I go back and forth about masturbation and all of that. Like, on one hand, it was keeping me, a virgin, for a long time, and then on the other hand, I'm feeling bad about it, and so it's just all this different stuff that's going on, and so I appreciate what you're doing. I think that is great. Let's get more of this out here. I don't know if this is going to be inspiring to the next person, but obviously we need more groups, we need more, more of these type of conversations to be had, especially in the church. Because like you said, I mean, us as wives, we should now be able to, again, express ourselves. We don't have to put our husbands down, like you just said, and be able to have a safe space to have these conversations and to learn and to whatever it is that we need to receive or, or give, whatever.
Right.
So.
And can I say this to whoever's listening? I just really feel led to take the pressure off that your virginity is the best gift that you can give your husband. I think that has been a huge pressure for whatever reason on girls more than men. I don't know why. Again, I got saved later in life, so that wasn't a thing for me, but it just seemed like there was so much pressure of your virginity is the best gift that you can give. No, sex is just icing on the cake. Marriage is great. I enjoy being married. I've already told my husband, you die, I'm getting remarried because I like being married. It's just, my husband, he's so sweet. He's like, well, if you die, I hit the jackpot. I don't think I could ever remarry. I'm like, no, you're remarrying because our kids need a mom. So if I die, you need to find somebody. Like, it's just, that's my command to you on my deathbed. Like, you need to find somebody. Our kids need a mom. But I love being married. Sex, however, is the icing on the cake. And was it awesome to be able to give my husband his virginity and his to me? Yes. But that's not the best gift I could give my husband. The best gift I could give my husband and him to me is our love and sacrifice for each other, because that's what marriage is. My gift is I am laying down my flesh for you. And Paul says in the New Testament that husbands are to lay down their lives for his wife, just as Christ did for the church. Christ died for the church. Like, that's a lot of love. That's the love that my husband is supposed to have for me. That's the gift. So to just take any pressure off of somebody that feels like their virginity is the number one gift they could bring to the marriage. No, it's not. It's you and your sacrificial love.
That's good. That's good. And I think the other thing that bothers me too about this conversation is that, again, all these different ideas and narratives that are pushed that are nowhere in the Bible. You know what I mean? Like, they want to push this idea that women had no, have no, and I get it. There are verses that say about, different roles that women should have, especially when it comes to church and stuff like that. And I totally understand that. But there's nothing in there that says that sex is only for procreation. There's nothing that's like sex is only for the husband and the man. And people,
when you read Song of Solomon, there's nothing about procreation. It's all about pleasure. Like, 100%.
They just pushing this stuff out here, and then people will come and be like, oh yeah, because the Bible says that. It's like, nah, but I read the part that's like, hey, don't come together. And then the only time you shouldn't come together is like when y'all are taking a break for prayer or whatever the case is, but don't do that for too long. Come back together.
Come back together.
Like, what about that part? It doesn't say anything about, and the man dictates when it should happen or whatever the case is. It was saying that the couple comes together and decides, like, okay, this is our time for break or prayer or fasting. Or
and I think where that came from was that scripture in Ephesians, where it says wives submit to husbands, but they leave out the verse that comes before that says husbands and wives submit to each other. Like, people completely leave that out, and they leave out the next verse that says husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And what submission literally means, when I am submitting to my husband, I am coming under his protection. That's what submission is. I am finding freedom and completely letting go and allowing him to protect me. I'm not saying women don't protect. Women protect too. There is a lot of protection that women do with their husbands and with their kids. I get that. But when I submit to my husband, it means I come under his protection. It does not mean that he controls me. He controls when or how we have sex. And because I'm supposed to submit to my husband, that I'm to watch pornography or do all the things that he wants to do. Nope. I come under his protection. Is his love protecting me? And sex is a part of that. Sex is a part of the two of you submitting to one another, coming under my husband's protection, and him loving me as Christ loved the church.
Right. And for some reason, it's like they minimize that part in regards to the husband's role. Like, that's huge. Like you just said, that's a huge thing.
And again, that was so scandalous back then. Back in the Roman Greco era, for Paul to say that was so huge, because men did not, that's not what Roman men did. That was not it. They did not love their wives as Christ loved the church. Like, it was all about themselves. So the fact that they are now to daily lay down their lives for their wives, that's a big deal. We don't see it as much of a big deal nowadays, because us women have so much freedom, especially in the Western culture. This is the best. I've been all over the world. I've seen what women don't have. I am so glad to be here. This is the best place to live on the planet. But back then, if we could really grasp what the Roman Greco era was like and what Paul was trying to say, it is huge. So huge.
But y'all, sounds like we got more studying to do, man. We need to go deeper with all of this. I mean, Ma'am, you've already dropped so many amazing gems. And again, I love everything that I hear that you have going on. If there's anything that I can do to assist, by all means, let me know. Because I'm all for, I'm on team more married sex, you know what I'm saying? So, whatever I can do to assist, whatever the case is, I would love to know. I know you have more books and things like that you wanted to talk about, like that you have and stuff.
I did just release a book a few months ago. It's called The Real War on Women: Overcoming Culture's Lies to Freely Live Out Your God-Given Purpose. And it's just all about the fact that we as women, we live in a spiritual war. And how do we get on board and fight? It has a World War II theme. And I wrote the book because I noticed we talked a little bit about victim mentality and entitlement. And I noticed that with a lot of women. There was a lot of women's marches a few years ago. And it made me angry once again, because I had been all over the world and I've been to countries where women have to marry their rapist, because when their virginity is gone, they're looked at as damaged goods. I've been to countries where I have fed little 9-year-old girl prostitutes probably the one meal that week they didn't have to work for. I've been to countries where I had to dress a certain way. I couldn't shake a man's hand. I couldn't look him in the eye, because then I would be considered a prostitute. We are so blessed to be here. And so I was really angry, and I wanted to write about it. And I was asked to bring the Mother's Day message. Normally our pastor's wife would bring the Mother's Day message, but she was going to be gone. And I ended up preaching that Sunday. And I just compared where we are in the spiritual war with the women from World War II. I noticed that during World War II, everybody was on board because there was a war on. And no, the women weren't on the front lines. They weren't storming the beaches of Normandy. They weren't helping people off of the USS Arizona and Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, but they were working hard because they knew the sooner they got on board, the sooner their dads came home, their uncles, their brothers, their husbands, their sons came back. And I compared that to the spiritual war that we're living in today. And after that message, I had so many women come to me in tears, even men coming to me in tears, because they were so thankful that I wasn't putting them in this box of what a woman should be. Because I believe that the world puts us in a box, and even the church sometimes puts us in this box. And if you look at all the women in scripture, there's no box. All these women were completely different, and they all are on different ends of the spectrum when it comes to femininity. And some were incredible leaders and warriors. Others were stay-at-home moms. Some were in between. And there's no specific place you are supposed to be on that spectrum except for where God has placed you. And it's a book about getting on deck and learning who your true enemy is. It's not the government. It's not men. It's not other women. Satan's your enemy. That's who you're fighting against. And finding out what your weapons are and what you use, how you fight with those weapons. And every chapter opens up with a story of a woman from World War II. And then I compare her to a woman from the Bible and how we are to learn from those stories in the 21st century. So that book released a few months ago. And then in a couple months, I will have this devotional for sale, and it will all be available on Amazon.
Oh, man. Look. We got a little warrior over here, man. Okay. All right. Look, I know I can sit here and talk to you all day. So I know I got to let you go at some point. So please, by all means, where can we find more about you and these awesome things that you're doing and everything like that?
I appreciate you so much for having me on. Thank you for having this conversation. Thank you for having this podcast, because I completely agree with you. Sex is something that we need to be talking about more in the church, being more candid about it, not making it taboo, not being afraid to talk about it. So I thank you for allowing me to come on, but also just being willing to have the conversations. I'm available at RachaelJenneman.com. I'm also on Facebook. You can find Rachael Jenneman, Unique on Purpose, which is my podcast talking about victories, how God has uniquely created all of us. And I think the more we find out how uniquely God created us, the more we can fight better in his kingdom and do what he's asked us to do. I'm also on Instagram. My panhandle is at Rachael Jenneman, as well as TikTok. I know I'm too old to be on TikTok, but I'm on it. So I just make funny videos about being a mom. That's it. So, and that's at Rachael Jenneman as well.
Awesome. Well, listen, we got to get in touch with this lady right here. Ma'am, I don't know. We got to collaborate or something because this is.
I'd love to.
To me, feeling good. Yeah, like-mindedness. Like, keep all the like-minded people close.
Right.
But I really appreciate you coming by tonight, and thank you so much for everything. And again, thank you for what you're doing. Keep on fighting the good vices, and that's all I got to say before I keep going on and on.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Miracle Sam's, let's go. No, I'm good, but I bet you wish it I would have a one night affair. But I won't go where you need. Cause right now you're looking so good. That's right. But is it worth the chance? Still even more than a day.
Thank you so much for watching God, Sex, and Love. And thank you to Rachael Jenneman for everything that she does. I hope that you all enjoyed this conversation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And check out her and her endeavors. Have a good night.
That I'm not the type